Middle of tweeting is live. I'm tweeting. Dut, dut. Yes, why not?
We
Hey, we have a guest.
That's right,
Hi,
we do.
hello, Larry, and hello, Drew. Long time no see. How
Yeah,
are
how
you?
are you guys? I'm doing very well. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Yeah, the last time I think we all talked together, we were all working for the same company, and now we're not.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yep.
It's a good time to be an IT
Are,
worker.
are are
Let's
we in
just say.
three different companies, or are you guys still in the same company, though?
I
Right?
think we're still in the same company.
Okay, you
We're
guys
still.
are still on that side. I'm the one that went.
Yeah, you
Flying,
you you
flying.
flew away.
Yeah, I flitted. I flitted. Indeed.
All right. So
This is a
the
special show. It's our first show of the year,
yes, it's our
right?
first show of the
That's
year.
one. Number two, our special show since we started our live streaming. Let's just say recurring pattern.
Yes.
We now have our guest that we've been promising for the longest time, and Mr. Drew, you have the honor of being our first
First guest.
First
proper
guest
guest.
2022 or first guest period?
No,
First guest, for a proper
first
guest for
guest
a
for the
long, long
live.
time. Yeah, for
For
the
the
live.
For the live.
Right.
All right. Well,
Right,
I'm
because the last time we've had like Rocky, Rocky, and we've
Yeah,
had
yeah.
like Joel Olson and stuff like that. We've had folks
Okay.
before, but they've always been like recorded. We're like in our studio and we can edit and do whatever. And now basically anything that happens, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So now here I am live via satellite.
That's right.
By
Not just by a satellite, by a fiber.
That's the way
fiber.
we all
Yeah.
are now, though. I mean, that's the new world order, right?
Fiber.
Everyone is working from somewhere else.
I know.
Yeah,
I
we-
remember when fiber used to be something that used to keep you regular, but there's something else.
All right, but
Gotcha.
but we're
I see
but
how
we're,
this show's gonna go. All right.
Yes.
we're glad to have Drew because Drew is a world famous podcaster.
Yes.
World famous. I mean, Security in Five is an award-winning podcast about security, and we're going to talk about things beyond security, but
Oh yeah.
Drew is the man if you want to talk about securing your enterprise, securing your applications,
Right.
how not to do it. That's the most fun.
I think
is
the how
when-
not to do it is practically like 90% of the battle because almost everything we do is like don't do that
Yeah,
and have security, right? Isn't that pretty
Yeah,
much?
you-
It's just don't do that. Don't go out.
Right.
You will-
You should think about that before you put that in, or let's have a discussion about that.
Yes. But as we found out though that as they say, putting on the blinders and being the ostrich with the head in the sand does not necessarily save you from ultimate danger.
No, and it's we always say it's not a matter of if you're going to get breached, it's when, and I always add it's not when, it's when you find out.
yes.
Oh, okay. That's a t-shirt.
That's the truth of it, because it's not when you're going to get breached, it's when you discover it, and that's the key, right? Because hackers don't want to be found. They don't kick down the doors and go, here I am. They want to remain hidden for as long as possible, and that's why. It's what is it now? I think unfortunately due to the pandemic, the numbers went up, but I believe now it's 180 days, which is 6 months before a company finds out they've been hacked. So when you hear about a breach, that's not, it happened yesterday. It most likely happened many, many months ago, if not longer, and they just found out about it. And the scary part is, in most cases, they didn't find it. Somebody outside told them that, hey, I found your data out here on the dark web, or this data showed up in this data set. You were hacked. And that's generally how it happens. But anyway, we work hard to try to prevent that.
Well, so, and I think if we look back just a little bit, before the first of the year, the Log4j, right? The big the big breach that came about because Minecrafters were hacking each other's. I'd say it came about. It was discovered and shown to the wild. I'm sure that other people probably already knew about it and were exploiting it before that, but that's when it became widely known. And so now everyone knows about it, and they've made their patches. But when I say everybody, I mean the people that are keeping track, and they're not the ones that we should be worried about. We should be worried about those companies that don't really even know that they have that running in their infrastructure.
Right. And I've had many conversations internally, clients, externally, other conversations I have out in the industry, and they always ask, how would you handle it, or what would you suggest that we do for this particular vulnerability? And it's
Right.
sound all the alarms, all hands on deck, stop everything that you're doing and address it. This one is about as bad as you can get. Um, and actually, I'm going to have a podcast episode probably on Monday that I just saw a report come out that the FTC is going to come after companies that are not addressing Log4j to avoid an Equifax level type of negligent delay and bureaucratic red tape process of failure to act, and they're going to go after it criminally and really bring the hammer down, which they should, because this one's bad. And it's in the reason being, getting the details of it, is that there's Sev 10, CVE level 10 vulnerabilities that come out all the time. But the problem with this one is that any moron with a keyboard could execute it. That's the problem. That's the problem of it, is that all you got to do is go online, put in a few keystrokes, copy and paste, fire it away, and hey, guess what? You are now a massive exploiting hacker with very minimal technical knowledge. And that's why this made it such a big problem. Even more so, it could be very easily automated. And once the proof of concept code is out there, then it mutates and away go. And now you're chasing the tsunami of attacks coming, and you just have to get ahead of it. That's why this one was so important to say, there is a point in time to say, yes, your backlogs have to stop. Yes, your releases have to stop. Yes, all work has to be shifted. Yes, the pretty little red button on next release has to go away. I don't care if this client is going to be mad because the green button didn't turn red this release. This is far more important. Well, and that's all seriousness.
That's the bottom line.
That's the truth. That's the truth.
Jetpacks. It's jetpacks and Kalashnikovs on script kiddies, right?
Absolutely. Right.
These guys now have real industrial strength hacking tools that script kiddies can use. And the problem is not, again, it's not the organizations that know or that even have a plan. Even if their plan is slow, they at least have a plan. It's all of those organizations that don't know that they have this risk. Right. And so should we have, and just a little provocative here, but should we have something that requires companies to prove that they don't have this vulnerability? I mean, this level, through a scan or through, how do you, instead of it being a false positive, we need to have a false negative almost, right? You need to prove to us that you do not have this vulnerability before we're going to say you're okay.
Yeah, and that's the biggest gap that you have in the cybersecurity industry across the board, is the old school mentality. I won't say a conflict of interest, but there is a level between being upfront and leading with the security foot and saying, yes, we are secure. Yes, we are doing these things, and then proving it to the point of revealing too much, which then could then be turned into social engineering and exposing what your environment looks like. Now, there's the CISOs and the security professionals who go to these conferences who say, we do all these things, or absolutely refuse to talk about it because it's too secret and you might hack me. It's like, no, it has to be a community, and there has to be some type of a certification process to say, look, we're not vulnerable to this, and this is why, and here you go. And there are some companies that are doing it very, very well. I've seen some companies that put it right on their front page. Here is our Log4j vulnerability. Here's our portfolio. Here are the vulnerable products. Wow. Here are the vulnerable, or the products that are not vulnerable because of this. Here are our supply chain services. Here are our cloud services, and we are working with this. Here are the links to all the release notes, when you can expect these patches. Here's what we're doing to compensate for it. And then others are just, they just send a letter out. Yep, we're aware of it and we're compliant. It's like, okay, well, great. Prove it, right?
Well, it sounds like though that this is one of those cases where, like, when it hit, I noticed that there were a lot of people that were scared, and there were a lot of large companies that did discuss issues with it. Yet it was not like the whole world. It was not like the Y2K scare where, like, oh my gosh, everyone's going to go down, and then nothing happened the next day. It was out there for sure. This is not a hoax. This actually was out there. But it appears that a lot of companies did weather that storm. And is
Oh,
it because
well,
they weren't using the tool, or is it because
they don't
they
know
got lucky,
yet that they've been hacked.
or they
No,
don't
no,
know yet?
No,
Exactly.
not hacked.
We're gonna
It is,
find out
no.
next week.
well, it goes. So I'm take it back to a 30,000-foot level.
Yes.
There are frameworks and best practices to follow out there in the industry. The one of them, you have NIST, you've got ISO if you want to pay for it, and you've got other, PCI and HIPAA and all those types of things. But even higher than that, you have they've recently changed the name, but it used to be the CIS Top 20. It's now the just called the Critical Internet Security Controls. I think they reduced it down to 18, and the top 18 doesn't sound as cool as top 20, so they just dropped the top number. But in any case, if you go look at that list,
Yep.
the first, what the first two are that companies should do as a best practice, which would have helped immediately have companies understand if they're vulnerable to this. Do you know what those two were?
SQL injection in there?
No.
somewhere?
What best practices, what security practices of what companies should do for internet security controls. So the first one is have an inventory of all your IT assets. Number two is have an inventory of all your software assets. And that would then conclude, development and all your third-party components and all those types of things. If you have those two, CIS controls.
Which one I remember? Oh, you got to download it.
Yeah, that was
No,
off
yeah,
Splunk,
just-
so, yeah.
Yeah, just put in your. Oh, that's no. It's
Here. Oh, there's a picture of some of them. There we go. Inventory and controls right there.
yeah.
Number
There
one.
you go. So those are the first two. So if you
Yep.
had those first two, which are the IT one is actually a lot easier than the software one because
Right.
you've got. I don't know how many other type of infrastructure management tools you have out there to scan and automatically detect devices on your network. So that's a little bit easier.
Right.
But number two, that's the one where Log4j would fall into.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have number two, then you'll know where they run on from number one. And that's the key. Now companies are scrambling. I mean, even internally with some of our projects and assessments that we've been working on, trying to figure out, are we using this? Are we not? And that's, just a practice is that inventory process isn't robust enough across the board. But you
Right.
look at the basic, it's under basic, number one and
number
two.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Exactly.
These are the inventories. What do you have? What versions? Where are they running? And so then when you get these types of alerts out, you're able to go over here and go, boom, okay, I've got these assets, and now I can rock and roll and remediate in a very quick and immediate fashion. And that's what's missing here.
It makes sense. A lot
And
of
it's
people
the-
get crazy with like the open source stuff, and they'll like download where they have like packages of Node and everything else, and they don't understand it. They're just using it with no understanding. We always tell folks that it's okay to play. You're in the cloud. You're doing all that stuff, but you need to understand what it is you're playing with to some extent. It's
Right. But it's the C level, right? It's the CIO, CTO that should be setting this direction. And it's like, as an architect, I should be required to provide it. Now, we're consultants, so we're going to provide it anyway with
right.
our best practices. But, the companies that we work for, if they don't have a home for it, if they're not asking for it, then they probably don't know they need it. So
Right.
that's a good
It's got to be
point.
part of their culture to begin with. This is
Well,
what I'm finding out. It's got to
an
be core culture.
Yeah, it's an enterprise problem from the top down,
Yeah.
and the CTOs need to do that at the guidance and direction of your CISO and as of your CFO, because that's financial, or your COO. That's for these first two, right? Those are,
Mhm.
and now the CIO ultimately for the infrastructure, but then when you get into the inventory assets, that's where you get into real problems if you have a lot of shadow IT or those shadow departments where, and what I mean by shadow IT in the projects that we work on, Larry, we hear all the time. If we go into a group of very smart people working on a very, very large project for a very large company, but they are working in the dark. They were given a budget of we'll just call it $1 million or whatever, and they're running now completely autonomous from anything else enterprise wide and have no clue about the rest. And they're actually introducing risk because the overall oversight doesn't understand what they're building. They're just knowing that they're building the shiny new toy, but everything else under that. Sorry about that. Let me try to mute this.
Sure.
Everything else under that, that's the risk. It needs to be a top-down driven type of a process.
Right. Or it needs to be kept separate and siloed so that that risk is at least contained.
Correct,
right?
but you still need to go back to number one and two to be able to.
Yeah.
You still need to centralize it. And if you have all these shadow IT compartmentalization going on, you still need to have a single point to go, am I vulnerable to log4j? Where is it being used in my environment? And go, here you go. Or the SM, the other big one, the other one that I relate this to, which is just as big of a deal, is about probably 8-10 years old now, was the Windows SMB 1.0 problem. Where if you're running, SMB sharing, you could blast off and take over Windows. I remember that one was a stop everything, scan the entire environment, and shut that down because it was on by default, and then vulnerability was found, and very easy to, you click on a bad link and away you go. But
all those network shares.
right. Yeah, absolutely. And that broke. Yeah. And when you're in a legacy Windows 2000 environment, even Windows 2000 NT4 type environment, and just kind of slowly migrated, never upgraded it. Oh yeah, that broke a lot of stuff, especially in healthcare space, and that longer story. But in any case, you have that type of thing, is that if you can upgrade, but you don't evolve, and you have to evolve along with the upgrades to be able to take advantage. Otherwise, you're just going to be bringing garbage in, garbage out. And now time comes to shut the stuff off. Well, now you're so entrenched into it. Now you have a real serious operational problem of how do you de-hook yourself from this severe vulnerability, but, and I always hear the complaints, well, it's too much money and this and that. Says, well, it wouldn't have been, you're just spending the money now rather than spread across over the last 10 years of doing it properly.
Yeah, it's like insurance, right? Why do you pay for insurance? Why do you do all that stuff? Why do you take care of your due diligence? You pay that little bit now so you don't have to get hurt in the future. I mean, you can go out and and not care. It's like, okay, well, this will never happen to me. Right. I think Drew was telling us, like, he's just recovering from his insurance that he took care of his latest jab I've done recently. Didn't have that issue. Yeah. So, but that's the case, right? He had, for that pain, for that area, the idea is, like, when it does come,
preventative is always less expensive.
Preventative is, yes, it's less expensive in the end. And it's always the case of, like, when we try to tell people, and we're doing that risk assessment. So here's the risk assessment. What's it mean to you if this happens? Will you shut down? Will you be out of business? And they say, no, we won't. I'll be just fine. Will you though? Are you truly? Are you assessing this properly?
How many customers?
In a lot of cases, it's just denial. Right? It's a denial. It's like, no, well, they can't first say that it will never happen. That's the first thing we heard that. It's a case of when, right? But then the thing is, like, well, when it does happen, what's going to happen to you? Well, they say, well, the worst case is we're down for a few hours and we're fixing it. The worst case is, we did everything we could, and we can show that we did everything we could, and this thing was just so tough that it hurt not just us, and they can probably maybe Microsoft and Google will.
And the real good thing is that this is not new, right? Yeah. I mean, these vulnerabilities and all of this has been going on for time.
If it's not log4, what is the next log4 that could be out there that you could be watching for? Can you watch out for, in general terms, that type of breach? Is it the case of just inventorying, or is it the case of don't use this kind of stuff? Some people say, oh, let's not use those open source JS thingies at all, ever, because that'll always be a vulnerability. But then now, how are you going to innovate? How are you going to move forward?
Right. My answer to that is that you can never plan for all the what ifs. They're just, it's impossible. You can never be 100% secure. What you can do is get the right people, processes, resources, technologies to build that robustness, the adaptability, and to be able to, rock and roll when things like this come up, to move your environment in the right direction quickly, efficiently, with little disruption. That's how you combat these types of things, so that when Log4j comes out, all right, here's a major disruptor, let's address it. For Log4j specifically, because you're dealing with Java, and God knows Java, you got to be very version specific, because and so that means you got it. N-1 with Java when it comes to versioning is very important in this case, which means you have to tweak your code. You don't upgrade just because you got to change your code. You do that because if something comes out, and we ran into a bunch of clients that were, like, well, we're running like Java 8, it's vulnerable for Java 8, but we can't go to Java 10 and update this patch. It's going to break all of our code. Why haven't you been upgrading Java over the last 25 years?
Right.
Aha.
Or how, stuff like that. And then that's not a failure of security. That's a whole different type of problem. But again, it's a business problem, right? You got to keep the business moving forward. You can't remain stagnant. You remain in the trenches, you remain stagnant, you are going to get bit. And it's going to it's efficient and doesn't cost you money and you have low budgets, whatever, but there's going to come a time that that bill is going to come due. And that's what you have to avoid. But if you stay
I think so, yes,
fluid with that, then you can adopt and change, because it's going to come in Log4j. I wasn't, as a company or C-level or whatever, we were not impacted. We weren't breached by Log4j, but I've got 25 critical portfolio products that do, and they're all up to date. So just applying these patches, test and release, great. I've got 25 products that were released and the customers are happy. We never touched it because we don't want to break it. Mm-hmm. But now we have to apply this. We are extreme high risk, and it's going to cost us an extra $2 million to retrofit, and might take us 6-8 months. And we have no way to compensate and control this because we can't pull Log4j out and just switch it, because it's at a core, that's why this problem was so major. But I would say if you focus on building the program and building the business to be adaptable, then you can weather these types of things a lot better, rather than trying to tactically piecemeal it and just say, we're just not going to use Log4j. Where I'm, as a security person, I'm here in Minnesota. Everybody knows about the Target breach, right?
Right. Yes.
Huge problem, right? And they're like, I'm never shopping at Target again. Well, I'm here in the Twin Cities. In the Twin Cities, it's the 3 degrees of separation for IT and security resources. We all know everybody. I have 100% confidence of shopping at Target, knowing that post-breach, companies like that are now exponentially more secure than probably any other retailer in the area.
Sort of like getting a shot, getting the antibodies in there.
Right. But they had to spend, whatever it was, $100 million of retrofitting over 3 years to get there. And again, lessons learned. Well,
right. The world according to Garp, right? This house is pre-disaster. I mean, that's what you're after.
Yeah, that's man. That's
when they say 3 degrees in Minnesota, that's also the weather there right now. I think too.
We warmed up. It is now 0.
It is now 0. Oh, get there. Did I call it or did I call it?
It was 18 below this morning.
Ooh.
Yeah.
4 below here, and now it is 3 actually over here. It is 3.
So if we back off this just a little bit, one of the things that it sounds like you're saying, Drew, one of the things that we would all really benefit from is being able to release software quickly, being able to make changes and release it quickly. And that leads to really our automation. We need to have some type of automation, not only for our software, but probably infrastructure as code for our hardware as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right. This is our favorite topic, actually.
Right. If we have that all automated, then it's just a matter of making the change and updating this one library, running the code through our automated tests, make sure everything still works. And it can be a 15-minute, an hour and a half job if things are set up well.
Yeah, that's the trick. If things are set up well. And in the agile DevOps world, everybody pulls out the Amazon and Netflix story of, Netflix releases 100 releases a day. Like, well, that may be true at some respects, but what's a change? They made a tweak to an algorithm. They changed a cover on a movie, whatever. But those are very, very small, but they can do that. Where 5-10 years ago, that would require you had to release the whole code base at once for that one little line change. You have to push it out, retest the whole server, make sure there's no memory leaks or introductions, all that right. But you and I, both know how difficult it is to get to that point.
To decouple
that initial point. It is a very involved process, but it is one of those cases where, like, if you do it from the beginning, when you're greenfielding it,
yes,
that's when to do it. I always tell people, it's like when we're starting a lot of projects, like, hey, now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up the CI/CD. We're going to do that automation. Oh, but we didn't even do the first program. Can we show something that's a win for somebody? Well, a win is the fact that I can push hello world out in 1 second. That's a win. But it's
But I
hello
want-
world. That doesn't look so good.
I-
Yeah,
I
well,
want
it's
the-
telling you I'm hello and I'm safe. How
I
about
want
that for the
well,
win?
it goes back to what I said before. I want the green button.
Yeah.
I want the
Oh,
green button now. Now. Not right, and then you go back, the old, do you want it done right or do you want it done fast?
no. And just
Well, I
later
want it
on,
done-
when you have, it's retrofitting. I tell them it's like later on, it's like going out in the car and you just put all the basic equipment and you went out and then you realize you have to go home now because you have to get, I got to get the connection for that battery. I got to get this oil. I got to get this thing. It's get all these parts that you got to go back and get. It's like, well, if you had your checklist before you went, you would have had this all. Remember how they say, go before you go? We always tell the kids that right away. Go now. It's like,
slow
I
down
don't
to
feel
speed
like
up.
I don't feel like going, Mom. You're going.
How, my son's awful about taking clothes and not folding them, just throwing them in his drawers. But then when he wants that one shirt, he's got to go through everything in the drawer.
Where is it?
And it's you slow down to speed up on this thing. And really, you're right. It's got to be at the very beginning. It's not just push the hello world. I want you to push the hello world, but then I also want you to push the services separately.
Yes.
The service layer separately. I also want you to push the schema that's behind it separately.
12-factor stuff that we've talked
Not
about.
at the same thing.
Yep. Come back into
Not
play.
at the same time. Or the Larry's Fine 9, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It's
The
always
12-factor. You've heard about the Fine 9, Drew?
I've heard him mention it before.
so it's
That'll
one
be
of
another topic.
One of those. Always deploy all of your pieces separately every time from the very beginning, because as soon as you say, well, this weekend I need to just push everything at once because I'm in a bind. It's going to come back and it's going to kill you, because as soon as you let them be coupled that one time, breaking them back apart and ensuring that they can be deployed separately is going to kill you. It's horrible.
Right. It's you make that mistake early. It's the case of like when you dump the Legos out there and you realize, it was in a package. It was nicely organized. I could have right then and there organized it before I started building, but now I dumped it. Oh, too late. That's it. You're done.
Well, it's like the project, Drew, you and I were on, the big one that I was on for 3.5 years. I mean, they were wanting to get to the point that they could deploy independently, but there was no way to break that coupling.
Yeah.
And because of that, if one team out of 30, if one team was delayed by a week, then all 30 teams were delayed by a week.
Right.
Ouch.
And
Ouch.
it's just, it grinds to a halt. It's really horrible.
Well, that's interesting. You brought that one up because that was the bane of security vulnerabilities and trying to get them remediated, even if they were high security.
Mhm.
Well, this release is already set. The other sprint has already started. We're already beginning planning for the next one. So you're 4 or 5 sprints away from getting this into the back. It's like, this is a Sev 10 vulnerability. We got to fix this, guys. Well, we just don't have the time.
Right.
But
then everything falls behind. If you want to keep your security thing, then you wonder, why does some things take long? And that's what people wonder. It's like, well, we went to the cloud to save time, to save this and that. It's like, well, why is it taking longer? It's like, well, because, like you said, you moved, but you didn't evolve.
Yes,
right? You have to change the way you're doing it. It's like, well, just because you moved to the cloud doesn't fix your problem. You have to evolve to think that in that particular area. Some people say, oh, we don't have to scale. We're only a few people use this. We just take Tweety Bird once a month to the vet, right? I said, yeah, but it does have snowstorms like anywhere else. And so that one time you want to take Tweety to the vets when you got your car that can't even get out of the garage. All right, same thing.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
hey, fun stuff.
This was all fun. What else do you want to talk about, Drew? Is there anything that you want to bring up, or anything that
you want to warn us now before of the next vulnerability?
I'll let you guys control the topics, because if I bring stuff up, this is only an hour show and we only got 30 minutes left. I could go.
True.
That's true.
Well, one thing that's new since you talked to Ralph last. Ralph has got news. Ralph, do you want to?
Oh yeah. So we go over here right now. You see the screen, my screen right now, and I type in my name. I
follow you on LinkedIn. I keep traps on you on LinkedIn. I saw this.
This happened. So this happened for January. Just letting folks know.
Yeah.
Normally I would say, don't toot your own horn necessarily, but I think this one though is a big one.
Oh,
I
no, this,
need to do
you toot this one. Yes.
That's where-
Congratulations. That's a
toot.
big deal.
It's a lot harder than folks think. It's the case also that if you're wanting it, you're probably not going to get it if you're wanting it. So this is the case where, like, for a while, I'll tell you frankly, there was a moment where, like, ooh, I think I really need this. It was when I was with the last job over there. It's like, that's the only thing that'll give me some respect. It's like, I need some respect. Somebody listen to me or something. Not exactly. That wasn't really the problem, but sort of like it was getting in there, and people were like, let's just say, giving me the impression that I could make this happen if I only managed a few things. When I let it go, when I just not think about it and just fill out the forms and just did what I did, like what Larry and I are doing just right now, without necessarily planning it, organically, this happened. Right?
Mhm.
Then people started recognizing it and said, you can't chase it. It's going to find you. Situation is what this is about. So actually, that's pretty impressive. So it's necessarily, I am in a company though that is doing a lot more with them. So there is visibility from that end. But from what I'm finding out, there's folks from my company that where I'm at right now that are very high level doing a lot of this great stuff, but they're not MVPs. But why not? Because the big difference here is community. The reason why we're doing this here and we're doing it for free, and like you could come to us and we could charge you that our special rates to talk to you about exactly these topics, right? But here you are. What did it cost you to click on YouTube, other than watching that ad, right? Which someone else is making money on. Nothing. It's about community, right? And this is the way in a lot of cases. And people say, well, don't go to community because then you'll reveal your secrets. And you know what? And I know I'm rambling over here, but that's what happened with my Coinbase. I think when we had our show about, and we have this little segment where we talk about Ralph's money, and like, where's my coin, my Bitcoin right now? And I think somebody saw it because all of a sudden I'm getting all these like spam mails that says, hey, Coinbase user, you need to update your account. You have a statement over here. Of course, I know those are fake. I mean, I know all the rules, but I'm getting a lot of those, and they're specifically calling my name out and calling Coinbase out specifically. So I'm going to say someone is attempting social engineering. They're attacking me directly because they saw the show. Thank you for watching the show, hacker.
And you're not falling for it because you had a good security research you worked under for many years, fishing you on a regular basis, trying to get you to trick up on that, right?
I wonder who that. I still don't know
who that was.
Of that stranger that kept trying to fish me over and over. And
that
tried
whole
all
stranger
kinds of
danger
tricks.
thing, man. That's awesome.
Right.
Well,
I still don't know who that was. Right? And like I see them all the time, and you can look at them, and sometimes like the URLs are so exact, and look at them like, wow, how did they get that? And all I can do is be amazed that they were able to get a URL that was so close, but just one letter off. Wow, who are these people? But usually, you know what? I don't think hackers like to do that either because that's easy to get caught. You know, when you're that close, you can trace that. When you're like crazy names, yeah, then that can exist somewhere in Kazakhstan, and they'll never find it.
See, you're out of the network now, so now I don't get these random team messages. Drew, is this you?
That's right.
Drew, is this you?
Drew? Hey, Drew, is this you again?
So, yeah.
The fun stuff, but that's true. Here's the thing, though. If your company's not doing this to you, you should question that. When I was with UBS, that was one of the things I used to do. We would actually call people up regularly and say, "Oh yeah, so I'm with IT. We're doing some. We're just checking something. Could you give me your password real quick? Because you just got to fix this." "Oh sure." And then basically that guy was busted. And then we have to give him coaching. That's what they call it.
At a former employer of mine, they did the phishing stuff, and then they also did the physical security a great deal too, because they issued laptop cable locks.
Right.
And if your laptop was at your desk, it must have been cable locked. And what they would do is they would send their security teams around the floors during lunchtime, and if they found your laptop not connected, they would just take it. And then they would sit there and wait on it, and then until eventually you reported it. And then you'd have to go through 3 days of training, and that would be a slap on your record, which would go into your annual review process. And you have to go in your manager head of shame that I've lost my laptop. They call security. Nope, we have it. Come down. Here's some training. All that stuff.
So you are the guy who did that. I must have heard about that before because I remember when some of our favorite big customers would give us a laptop and they'd come with the chains in there. It's like, well, oh, we never use this. Yes, you do. If you go anywhere with it and you don't use it, guess what? Someone like that, exactly, like a Drew could come by and take your thing away, and they're going to get you. If you're a contractor, forget it. You're out.
Yeah, see,
If
but
you're
now,
in there, at least you might get coached. But if you're a contractor, you're out of here.
Yeah, I wonder if this new laptop I got's got the.
cable
It
lock.
probably has.
I'm
It's
sure
like
it does.
you're at home. I have like 4 or 5 locks just hanging out because I
Yeah.
keep forgetting to
See,
send them back.
now we all work from home, and so now we have a front door.
Sure.
Yeah. Basically, in my case, is like if they breach this far, it's pretty much over. It's like Armageddon. It's like you got this far, take it. I'm done. I'm cooked. I don't need to get that secure. But I mean, this is the thing. They give you that, you use it. They're not hard to use.
They're not.
Right? I know they're inconvenient. And here's the thing, like anything else, it's inconvenient. Well, I wear shoes when I go out. It may be inconvenient because I like to, wiggle my toes in the sand. But you know what? I don't get the glass in my toes either. Same thing. They have fun.
Well, and the one time that you don't do it, right? The one time that it does matter and you didn't do it, it just costs so much. I mean, it's such a little effort to do that just at one time. All right. Well, what else do we have? Let's talk about passwordless entry. Microsoft's all about passwordless entry now.
So here's the thing. Yeah. So that's the big question. The question is, we still sometimes I'll have companies that you got to change the password still every 30 days, every 90 days. And then you have the case of never, ever changing a password. But
or you don't have a password at all.
Right. That's the future, is the passwordless. And Microsoft is leading the charge on that for their passwordless. And a lot of people don't understand how it works, but in the Windows 10 they introduced it. Windows 11 is you enter a PIN. You set your account up, you're actually entering a PIN now. And that PIN is technically it's a knowledge-based password, but it's not your password to your account. And that PIN is actually a localized encrypted subsection of the operating system to unlock the operating system that is not tied to your account, your username and password and because it's now 365 to your Outlook account or your business account for 365. And that's one of the different ways of going to passwordless, because passwordless needs to happen, and again, Microsoft is leading the charge. Google's good at it, is integrating multi-factor authentication into everything, which is the absolute, it should be mandatory across the board. And the
one that I
still
really
can't
enjoy,
understand. Yeah, go ahead.
The one that I really enjoy, Microsoft Authenticator now. There are certain sites Microsoft has that when you log in, you put in your username, of course, and then it will show you a number, and your authenticator is going to pop up and show you 3 numbers, and you choose that one number. Choose the number that's shown, and you're logged in. You don't have to do a password. You just have to physically have this device, and it's amazing, right? I mean, that's the
number changes. It's almost like, remember those RSA those dongles, those things you had. It's almost like that. So every few seconds it changes. Like I'm looking at mine right now, and I'm watching
that's
different.
That's different.
That's different.
That's good. I do that one as well. But there's a new one that it doesn't ask you for a password at all. It shows you a number, and you have to choose that number.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It comes up like, what's the number? 72, 64, or whatever, and then it matches up. Yes. And so I'll get that. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I'll see like someone's asking for authentication. Well, I know that's not me.
That's not me.
It could be one of my machines over here restarting or rebooting, because that does happen. But it doesn't matter because I cannot interact.
So let's talk about that. If you get that, your machine should not be auto authenticating. So that's not going to kick off if it's just rebooting. If you have, and this goes into a true story of mine that happened last summer. Story. So multi-factor authentication, you have, so for those that are unknown, you have three factors of ways to authenticate, and these 3 factors have been around for 40 years, longer, right? Something comes from your mind. Something you have, which is the RSA dongles, your phone, a USB token, in some respects, a security certificate, something that is physically near your personal body. And then the third one is something that you are, which is biometrics, which I'm not necessarily a full fan of. Apple's Face ID is probably the closest to the best biometric use out there. fingerprint scanners, horrible idea. I hate them. The reason being is that if your biometric system is hacked, one of your 10 fingers can never confidently be used ever again because your fingerprint now is out in the wild. So actually, it's 20 because you can use your toes. But I don't know if you mean.
I think that's news to some people, but we're going to take a note.
Yeah,
somebody's noting this.
In any case, so biometric, so multi-factor is you are doing 2 of 3. 2 of the factors. Now, one of the problems that I've seen out there is the mentality with certain organizations and people is that, well, I get asked for a username and password, and then I'm asked for my security questions. I got multi-factor. No, you have step-up authentication, but that's not multi-factor. That's still knowledge-based. All those answers are coming from your mind, which means that all those answers can be harvested, can be socially engineered, can be guessed, can be credential stuffed, can be John the Ripper generated. Brute force, and whatever. All those things can be figured out far away from you across the world. The 2 factors is something that you know and something that you have or something that you are. So something that you know is my PIN, and then something that I am is the face ID. So, or I have, username and password, and then I'm using Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator, Authy, whatever, LastPass, whatever you're using for your code generation, or they're pushing something to you, but to your physical device,
right?
Something that you have. And so last summer, I remember I was out mowing my lawn. Anyway, I was out mowing my lawn, and I started getting multi-factor authentications from Nintendo. Here's your login code. Here's your login code. Here's your login code. And I'm sitting there mowing my lawn, and so I was like, well, that's odd. So I went inside. No one's using it, and video gamer. We've got a Switch, and of course, once Nintendo released multi-factor, I turned it on, and sure enough, about every few minutes, I was getting a multi-factor authentication code sent to my phone, and I thought, oh crap. So what that told me was that my credentials were compromised. Somebody was successfully entering my username and password to get to the point where the multi-factor was initiating, which was sending a code to my phone. And they were texting it to me because Nintendo at the time didn't have Authenticator app support. So you shouldn't use text messages if you can. That's a different conversation. But in any case, so I went in, I changed my password, and then I started hitting the internet looking for it. And it wasn't until several weeks later that they finally admitted that they had a breach of some kind where credentials were stolen. Ralph, I think you froze.
Yeah. I should have hopefully still here. No,
you're freezing.
We can hear you, but you're.
Yeah, you're.
My network's going funky again.
Okay. So
I'm getting back.
Case, so that was a good indication to me that my credentials were compromised, and because it came from a breach, because I have security guy and I'm paranoid, I have unique passwords for every site that I use. So I went and I changed my password, and guess what? Oh, the text messages stopped. Now, had I not had multi-factor authentication, then my Nintendo account would have been accessed. Well, so what? It's your video game account. No, I got a credit card in there for purchases. I've got other things in there. I can buy games and gift them to somebody, delete my account, change the password, take it over, do all these types of terrible, awful things. And that's what was going on. So multi-factor. So for you, if you're getting codes, actual codes, that is an indication. This goes to everybody out there that if you are not doing anything to your accounts and you're getting authentication codes from your multi-factor, like especially text messages, your account has been compromised. They're making it past the first step and going to the second factor, which is by design what multi-factor is supposed to do. If your username and password are compromised, that second factor prevents them from using it because they don't have what you have or what you are to get through.
That makes sense. When I do get it, though, it's not my main account that's getting it, because as you know, Authenticator works with so many different accounts. You can keep adding a whole bunch of ones. So when I see that and it happens overnight, I'm like, when I look at my messages over here, I can already tell it's like what I call them the dead accounts. Right? They're right now, because I've never been to them for a long time. They were once off for like some event or some other area. They're something like that. So those, clearly, what you're telling me now is those have probably been breached. And every so often someone is trying to fish and see if, they can get in to some point. right? So they're able to figure out my ancient passwords for those. Sometimes I have what's called throwaway passwords that I use. Maybe I shouldn't use those anymore. Well, actually, no, I haven't used a throwaway password in ages because I haven't had to. But like back in the old days, before there was MFA, I used to make a throwaway password for something that says if they breach this and they find it, I'll know who it is because it's a throwaway, right? And throwaways were like for events usually. And as long as there's no money, no credit cards, no other personal information, is when I would use a throwaway. But that was
a throwaway password or throwaway account.
Throwaway account, really, if you think about it. It's like it's not connected. It's not connected to my email or anything else. But sometimes they'll have an authenticator version to it, and I add it so that I can quickly get in without having to type in a password.
And you probably want to
I should clean those out.
Yeah, clean those out because
Microsoft
is real good about consolidating those things. They notice that, well, this is the same as this, so can we just bring these together for you? And you really don't want them to bring those into your.
You know what? I don't have any of them anymore. The last one was the last time I got that authenticator message. I threw that away.
Good job.
Yeah. So and this is leading into the absolute use case that I believe everybody should be using is a software key vault or a password vault for all your accounts. Do not be using Excel to keep your passwords locally on your hard drive.
Or OneNote.
Or any type of text document or anything. It's like, oh, my computer's secure. I'll put it in a shared drive. It's on my computer. No, it's not. I can't go into too many details of it, but as part of some sides security research that I have done and written scripts for is you'd be surprised of how many hundreds and thousands of external hard drives are connected to exposed UPnP routers that are wide open to the internet that these people have absolutely no idea are out there. And I would say within 3 minutes, I could find enough tax information on a half a dozen people to cause identity theft inside of 5-10 minutes, because I am able to find, and their FTP is turned on. I can walk right in, find their tax folders going back 5-10 years, password files, spreadsheets, and then when we find them, we'll reach out and say, hey, I found this, you need to do this. There's also indications, it can tell that this has also been accessed by other people because these files are crypto miner files that hackers have found. And again, these aren't hackers via keyboard, sitting at their keyboards doing it. They're all bots. It's all scanners.
It's all
hackers,
automated. Yeah.
It's all automated. Hackers are efficient. They're not doing it manually. They're just running bots and collecting those types of things. And in most cases, they're not even exploiting them themselves per se. They're consolidating lists and then selling those lists. Here are legitimate accounts, and then selling those lists for $1 to $1 to $3 per account, depending on. And your personal information is not worth much, right? I think a valid Facebook account. Well, yeah, I mean, I think a valid Facebook account now is like $2. Your credit card is like $1. Health information's in the double digits, I believe. I still it's like $10-15 for a fully fledged healthcare data file on an individual, because you can insurance fraud, prescription medication fraud, that sort of thing. Credit cards, you get breached, okay, you hit reset and away you go. Medicare doesn't quite work that way. It's a lot harder to reset your lifetime of diagnostic information. You just can't do it.
That's important to know.
But it's all bundled now, right? I mean, it's a commodity.
It is.
That's what they are.
Unfortunately, it is. But a password vault, that then allows you to do multiple things. One, collect all of your accounts into one place. And number two is ensure that you're using a unique complex password for every account that you have. If you want to avoid credential stuffing, do not use the same password on more than one site.
Right.
Period. And you'd be amazed the stuff that I've seen where just people use the same password on all of their sites, banks, healthcare, whatever.
Right.
And the problem with that is, okay, well, I got a very complex password. Let's say it's 30 characters. Okay, great. No one's going to guess it, or not no one. Highly improbable that it's going to be guessed. That's the correct security answer. 30 characters, complex, whatever. Even if it's a passphrase, a song lyric of some obscure 1940s, jazz song or whatever, that's fine. Okay, it's complex. Mathematically, it's going to be very, very difficult to crack. However, if you use that on 30 sites and one of those sites was breached because they had extremely poor password security controls and stored it in MD5 or even clear text, well, now all 30 of those sites that use that password have to be considered compromised because they're going to take that complex password and that email address, they're going to slap it in their bots, and they're just going to go blanket the internet. And all of a sudden your bank is breached because you didn't have MFA on it. They walked right through the front door, got through their security checks, and drained your bank account. Well, how did that happen? I got a complex password. True, that prevented them from kicking the door down, but they got it from somewhere else because you use the same key everywhere. You don't do that. But a password vault, so I use LastPass. I've used other ones. I've kind of hovered on LastPass the last couple of years. That you can run a security report, and I've got, I don't know, 300, 400, 500 accounts, and it's just ridiculous. But it'll run a security report and go, nope, okay, every site is using a different password. Here's your password strength on all of your accounts.
I noticed the Apple phone now does that. The new version was like, it immediately told me, it's like, hey, here's four accounts where you're using the same password. It's like, well, those accounts I haven't used in a while. Well, no wonder why they have the same password, because that's what I used back in that particular time. So it gave me the the opportunity to click through it and follow through at least to the sites to do the updates. And if it finds even two of them the same, it says that I have two of them the same.
Well,
right?
And
right now I have a whole bunch of separate passwords and doing that again separately on this.
We use LastPass Family as well. I mean, that's what we use. And yeah, they're not paying us any money. There are other ones out there. It's just the one that we decided to use, or I decided for us to use. But it also checks your passwords against have I been pwned, and checks to see if you are using a password that you perhaps used in the past that is out there in the wild. And it'll keep you from reusing that password.
Right.
So,
and that's interesting because NIST has drafted up. So NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which the government follows or supposed to follow.
All right.
So NIST is kind of like the de facto go-to security best practices, guidelines, and frameworks to follow. ISO, NIST, you got a whole bunch of other ones. At the end of the day, at the foundational and fundamental level, they're all the same, right? There's really no variance between the two. They're all going to say the same thing, and you secure things the same way. Some will go about it differently in different levels of risk and whatever. But at the end of the day, you secure your data. If you fall under ISO and NIST, we follow NIST. Okay,
right,
good. Is your data protected? I don't care what you follow. Is your data protected and how you're protecting it? And the other ones just happen to be, whatever. They're guidelines. But anyway, NIST released a draft probably 2 years ago. They're a couple of years out before the official published, but they're had suggested, and they have to ratify it and decide if they're going to go forward and make it official, that in the government through NIST, no password for accounts can be any password that has been breached. So right now, have I been pwned is kind of like the go-to central area for it. And
hey, didn't we know the guy who did that? That's someone we actually
know. Troy Hunt.
Yeah.
Mike, I think he's still at Microsoft. Anyway, he's a security god. He's it's Troy Hunt.
Yeah.
Anyway,
you're not worthy.
No, we are definitely not for what. No, he's the go-to. Anyway, so he gets these breach reports. He downloads them. He buys them off the dark web or however he gets them. He gets them sent to him. He'll check them out, verify them, and do some things, and then put them into this Have I Been Pwned website. Pull up Have I Been Pwned. Website, and you can enter your email address and see if your email address has been part of a breach and blah blah blah. So anyway, he has all of these passwords now, and now has exposed it as a service. And I'll let you bring it up because I don't remember the number now.
There it is.
So there's 11. Oh wow. No, I'll go turn that off.
Yeah. Click off that.
So at the bottom, there are 11.7 billion, right? Yeah, 11.7 billion passwords out there. So what NIST is saying is that if you reset your password for your Windows account within this government office, it can't be any one of those 11 billion. Because all those 11 billion are out in the wild and are being pushed through bots all the time, and therefore you're using a compromised password, and it's only a matter of time. So all passwords in here by de facto can never be used ever again. So password 1234 never be able to be used anywhere by anyone ever again, which is the way it should be. But this is also going to push.
What, remember this one? Pass. This one. Remember this guy?
Oh yeah. Well, the A was an ampersand. No, the A was an ampersand.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That was the ampersand. And then they did this one. Pass.
Dollar signs.
That's right. Dollar signs.
No, not the @ sign, the ampersand. Shift 7.
Shift 7. Let's see. Shift 7. This guy.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
And then pass, and then W0 RD.
Yeah. There we go.
There you go.
And of course it'll have a number because it has to have a number.
Yeah, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
That one has been owned, I'm sure, pretty much.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. QWERTY. QWERTY's the other one.
Yeah. It's here. This is my the other one that that we love over here. You know how to do it? You just simply do this.
Just
there we go.
like a piano, just right across.
Yep. There we go.
So anyway, so the 11.7 billion passwords, right? Eventually, you're going to run out of combinations for 8 to 16 character strings to fall into those gaps. So this will usher in, we go to passwordless, which is in multi-factor, obviously, but you're going to get into more of a push to passphrases, or what in the same draft, NIST had changed the nomenclature from passwords now to calling them memorized secrets, trying to get the mentality to push away from singular characters and singular strings to passphrases or sentences. Because when you go into human psychology and the effect of memory retention, and if you're really far out there cybersecurity professional like me, human psychology you should dip your toes into and study about, especially when it comes to memory and retention and behavior analytics and things like that. And the memory retention is very, very interesting to me, because if you think about it, you have an 8-character string made up of capital, numerical, alphanumeric, special characters, right? Remembering those 8 characters is significantly harder than remembering a 10-word sentence. You have less items over here, but our mind is more abstract than and easier to recall abstraction than and contextual things than N. And the way the memory stores it, N, ampersand, dollar sign, all of those are stored as individual little buckets. Whereas the sentence,
you saw how long it took for me to put that together as just an example, right?
Right.
I could have probably remembered something simpler.
Yeah, and in your mind, those are stored as individual little bits. Whereas the whole sentence, "Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light," that's in your mind, it's easier to retain. It's stored as one big chunk. Not that you should use that because it's a very popular phrase, but what I mean. You know what I mean. You have the same problem with popular passwords as you can use popular song phrases.
Yeah. So there's my phrase right there. That you might think that I might or I might not use. Am I throwing you off my scent? I don't know. But there's an example of a phrase that someone would probably remember easily.
When you're using something like LastPass or really, all of our browsers now will give you the option of, do you want me to generate a password for you and save it?
Yeah.
You should never do that. Never do it through the browser.
Never do it through the browser.
Do not use the browser's password storage ever.
I mean,
when Chrome or Firefox or Edge says, or Safari says, "Hey, do you want to save this password?" No, I got my own. I'm good. Don't use the browsers. If you do, I'm a Firefox fan. I'm anti-Chrome, anti-Edge, just because Firefox is the leading privacy and security centric browser. They're doing more upfront security and privacy than anybody, any other browser else. And Google Chrome will just leave it there. If you care about privacy, security, fine. Privacy, different issue. But either way, you can do. We're running out of time, but you can look at research and look at how the browser password storage and how they're stored is not quite there yet.
Have you seen Brave? I just want to call out to Brave real fast. If you're talking about browsers, it's a good browser. It is privacy first. Just
Brave.
Yeah, brave.com.
Brave.com. Here it is.
Just
Best privacy online. Brave.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good other browsers out there. The problem where it gets into it is the productivity aspects to it. So I run a lot of other. They're too right, and they don't have that extensibility, and they may, but then developers still have to support for it.
Yeah.
Whereas in Firefox, I've got my LastPass plugin. I've got I can turn it right down here. So I've got my DuckDuckGo Privacy Essentials, Grammarly, of course, so I can write good. LastPass. I got my ad blocker. I've got my WTC checker. Make sure I got my VPN, ExpressVPN running. I've got my Canvas, my Canvas fingerprint blocker, my HTTPS everywhere turned on, and my Qualsys browser check, and of course
we're gonna have you back to talk about Canvas, your Canvas.
Show us your stuff.
Well, yeah,
show us what your stuff might look
Canvas
like.
fingerprint. The Canvas fingerprint that's a talk in and of itself.
Oh, absolutely, and yes, and that will tie into what I like about Firefox above all others, is you have incognito mode, and Chrome doesn't have this, but Firefox is the only browser that has containerized tabs, which is becoming, and they released that a couple versions ago, maybe 6-8 months ago, but it is tremendously powerful and very, very useful when you get into privacy and even productivity. If I'm loading up, Larry, we have the old company, the new company's Teams things, and the web versions. If you're using the web, you'd have to pull up Chrome or another browser to keep them separate. Well, at least with Firefox tab containers, I can fire up a company A tab and company B tab, and it keeps all of the sessions, all of the cookies separate.
In the tabs. In the tabs. Edge, you got to go and have profiles, and it opens up a whole new section.
Yes, and Chrome's the same way. All that's, but at least in the tabs, I can just go. Yeah, so I go over here.
So you can go into tabs like here.
So I've got a personal tab, work tab, banking, shopping, Facebook, private, and then company A, company B, and you can set up as many containers as you want. So I can run Twitter. I can, if you have multiple Twitter accounts like I do, I can run 2 Twitter tabs and have 2 completely different Twitter sessions running in the same browser, rather than doing it. So and it also keeps
multi-windows like I have right over. See, I have my multi-windows down over here for exactly this to work.
Right. And then the other important thing is that Firefox does by default, love it or hate it, you have to use Facebook, especially if a company uses Workplace.
Killing me here.
Not saying anything.
Anyway.
Not saying anything.
Got it. Can't get away with it. Anyway.
Yeah.
But what the other thing that the containers do is that it prevents cross cookie tracking. So if you're using this, one tab to go to this site, it's all contained within that container that you've built for that tab. That way, then they can't see over here with your other cookies of where you're going, and it completely isolates it and strips that ability for that tracking piece. Wow. And the Canvas fingerprinting is something completely different, but that adds to that de-anonymizing you, or making you anonymous. De-identifying you from your browser and changing your fingerprint, because your fingerprint also, the little cookie trackers, and there's when you get it.
We're 4 minutes over.
I told you.
Have to run.
We're making the case over here.
Yelling at me.
The case over here. That's why we have. This is probably one of the most watched or listened to, I should say, podcasts that's out there. Frankly, there's this is it.
Get over to security.
Maybe it's like how to say it, well known and not well known at the same time. It's hard to explain though. But other than the fact that, like, I listen to it, Larry, I'm sure, listens to it, right, Larry?
Yes.
But you should, if you're doing stuff in the cloud, the security is going to be part of it. Whatever you're doing, if you're doing anything professional, even in the private stuff, you got to have your security in mind. At least a few of these episodes just to keep fresh, and once in a while, Drew will get you at least refreshed. If you don't have to listen to Drew every day,
I want to change that sentence just a little bit. Not security in mind. You want to have a security mindset.
Mindset.
And that's a subtle difference, but it's very important.
It is mindset versus right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to run. I don't know if everybody else is, but my clients are yelling and screaming. We're 5 minutes over.
Larry, get
All right,
back
Thanks,
here.
Drew. Thanks for
Yeah,
coming
I
in.
got lucky. All right,
Thank you,
we'll
Ralph.
see you. And for folks, we have M365 next Friday. No show. M365 Chicago conference next Friday.
All right. See you, everyone.
All right.
Thanks for
Well,
having me, guys.
We'll talk to you. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.
All
Take
right,
care.
Thank you. Bye.
Raquel, get us out.